Welcome to the FAST Podcast, Financial Advisor Strategy Talks with Laura Galloway, SVP of Financial Education at White Glove. Laura provides advisors with an opportunity to hear from some of the best minds in the business. Follow along to learn quick tips to help you grow your business, from gaining new leads to keeping current clients engaged, and everything in between. Now, on to the show.
But hello, and welcome to the FAST Podcast with your host, Laura Galloway. Laura, good to be with you again. How are you?
I'm doing great, Bill. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. It's been a while since we've seen each other, and it's nice to see you again.
Likewise.
What do you have in store for us today?
Today, we have a fantastic guest who is helping advisors scale up their businesses everywhere. One of our co-founders met our guest today and met him at a conference, started talking to him about how he was helping advisors grow their businesses. And this is something I think is just going to be really timely as we go into 2024. And we have a lot of firms that have been experiencing great growth. And I think this is a really useful conversation to be having. So I'm going to welcome our guest, John Duncan with Advisor Seekers. And let me share a little bit about John before we jump into the Q&A. So John is the co-founder and president of Advisor Seekers, a boutique recruitment firm that caters to the needs of financial advisors in the RIA and independent broker-dealer arenas. So he's a veteran recruiter in the wealth management space, and he has a reputation for building lasting relationships with financial professionals and executive leaders across the country. His deep understanding of the financial industry and down-to-earth approach enables him to build the level of trust it takes to find and place top-tier talent. His areas of expertise include wealth management, executive recruitment, accounting, human resources, foreign currency, and insurance. So please join me in welcoming John Duncan of Advisor Seekers to the show. Hey there, John.
Hello, Laura. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you here today. So I have a few questions that I want to go over with you, but I just want you to share just a little bit about that conversation. I think you had, was it with Jeff Grail? Is that who you talked to initially?
That is correct. Jeff and I talked in Dallas at a conference that's being put on by Advisors Excel. And so we cater there. We have our booth, I guess our dog and pony show, so to speak, that where we're there meeting with advisors and talking to it. And we happen to be set up across the aisle from him. And so we started talking there.
Well, he came back all fired up, John. He was like, you got to talk to this guy, John Duncan. He's so great. He's got this amazing concept. I'm like, well, tell me more. So that's how all this came about. So I'm really glad to have you here. We did just do a webinar with you as well, because we feel like this is we have so many advisors that we are seeing adding on sub reps and trying to build out their businesses and scale up, but it's not an easy task. And it takes a different set of skills than many of our advisors have. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm excited to jump into this. So as you know, we at White Glove, we work on seminar marketing, and that's where our expertise lies. So we're all about helping our advisors grow their business by gaining quality leads in the industry and converting them into long-lasting relationships. So out of all the hosts that we have that have had this tremendous growth happening, they are now bringing on sub reps. And I just want you to share a little bit, if you will, John, about how advisors can identify sub reps who are going to be a perfect fit for their team. Like, where do you even start? If you know you're ready to do this growth, how do you start singling out who it is that would be the right fit for your team?
Yeah, fair enough. I think the first hurdle that they've got to get past is most of the people that are looking to branch into this, right? You started as an advisor, you've built your book to a certain level. Generally, you went through the trials and tribulations of how to do that. Then they get into marketing, which is something that you guys specialize with. And now they're starting to realize they can use different avenues to bring clients to them. So now they're starting to expand. They want to add people. The biggest hurdle that they have is identifying what they need or what they're looking for. Most of the time, the hurdles that we see when they do this is, hey, I tried doing this and it didn't work.
Same with marketing, by the way.
You get what you pay for, so to speak, is an easy term. But most of the time, we get in our own ways. And by that, I mean, well, you hired a person, they had a degree in finance, they didn't have much experience, you were going to train them up, but they ended up not working out. Well, how did you get them? What did you do? the common answer is, well, we host these seminars at this restaurant, and this person was graduated. They were our host, and our clients loved her when she was bringing them back, or he was bringing them back, and when the interaction was really well, but they hired the person because of their personality skills, and they didn't really dig into what were their goals long term, what were their knowledge on the accounting and finance side, what was their knowledge on the investing side, how were they going to fit into my business. All they hired was somebody that was social, had a good personality, and somebody that they would like to associate with, versus the person that wanted what they had, which was, I'm really good when I get in front of clients. I'm very passionate about advising. I'm not passionate about prospecting. So identifying their value proposition, what they have of value to give to the potential candidate, and then finding the candidate that values it. Most of the time, they're not hiring people that have had to work for Morgan Stanley or Merrill Lynch and grind. Those are the people that realize what the value proposition of that client is, which is, I get to come do what I was passionate about, and I don't have to do what I wasn't passionate about.
You make a great point. So I can see how a lot of advisors would make a mistake that, first and foremost, you like somebody and you decide the chemistry is good, therefore this person would be a good fit on my team. But it's so important what you just said. Like, there are some people that are great at prospecting. There are some that are great at writing a plan. There are some that are great at engagement over time, or like so many different elements of the business. But getting it, so I feel like before we even tell an advisor to start hiring subreps, they really actually need to do a self-evaluation and say, here's what I bring to the table. Here's what I've got to offer. Not just, I'm looking to grow my business and I need a warm body.
I would agree. And then also, they generally do a very poor job of analyzing how much time and energy they have to commit to it.
Yeah.
We've all done it, right? We have a vision of what we want in our heads, and we expect people to read our minds. So we want people to take stuff off of our plate, but if they don't do it the exact same way we did it or we wanted it done, now sometimes it's better, and it's like, oh, that's not exactly what I was thinking, but it works. But with advisors, they need to decide, if I hire that person right out of school with 1 year of experience, I don't have to deprogram them and reprogram them, but I do have to train. And I can't tell you how many of them think that training is an option.
Yeah.
But most of them aren't willing. I think they underestimate, is the right way to put it, the amount of energy and time that it takes to do that. So that's the first step, is identifying one, what do we want this person to do? Two, how much time do I have? Because there's plenty of people out there that say, I have 5 to 10 years of experience, and this is what I want to do. I want to be a W-2 employee with somebody. I want the leads coming in to me. I'll close them. That person can own the business. This is a win-win across the board. Or do I want that person with 1 or 2 years that I'm going to have to train?
And do you think, I'm just curious, do you find a lot of your clients are looking for, that whale killer, the rock star, or are they looking for something different when they first start hiring? Like, what is the mindset that the people that you are working with, what do you see most often?
We get a little bit of both. It generally starts off with, I want to hire this experienced person. But there's an art form to that. You need to make sure there's a difference between a person that said, I tried to do this and it hasn't been successful and I want to do more. Like, I want to try it again. We need people that are going to, in most of our situations, if any of your clients that are using marketing to help expand what they're doing and considering a new market, if you're moving into a new market that you don't have a presence in, that's a different person than a person that's going to be working for you where you're going to be every day. But then
so if you're trying to expand your footprint past whatever state you're currently in, maybe get some contiguous states or something like that, you've got somebody that's going to be working completely independently of you.
Yeah. If I have an office in Detroit, Michigan, and I say, man, I've got a few clients from Ann Arbor that are coming over to see me, it'd be nice to have an office there. You need a leader in that office. It's a standalone satellite deal. The person that would work in Detroit won't work necessarily in Ann Arbor. You need a person that's going to take the reins a little bit more. Most of our clients are saying, hey, we have a set process. We have a defined value proposition, a certain thing that we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
We need somebody that can take that script and make it theirs. I would say look, I want you to drive the boat, but there's some navigational beacons that you have to keep the boat between. As long as they can clearly identify that, it works. But if you hire somebody that you really want to just follow a certain process, and that person is more of a maverick, now you've got a problem. And they tend to say, oh, I hired a person with experience and it just didn't work, so now that'll never work. Generally, what we find is they didn't talk to enough people. They made their decision with a limited set of candidates to make that decision with, and they hired the best that they could, but they generally didn't spend the time and energy to really find out what makes that person tick and what they're looking for. So it's wildly successful for 30 to 60 days. Personality traits start to come into play. After a while, it just doesn't, it's not always bad, but it's not great, right? And that's what we want is great.
So let's talk about that finding process, like thinking about the recruiting process. I know there's active recruiting and there's passive recruiting, and I'm curious what sort of results you're seeing from each of those approaches, and maybe just define what active versus passive means.
Active is traditional recruitment. We put an ad on LinkedIn, on Indeed, on Glassdoor, on Monster, at the CFP Society, the CFA Society, whatever. And these are the people that are actively looking to switch jobs. Could be because the person that they work for currently is selling the business. It could be because they just got a U4 or U5 violation. That's the problem, is you just don't know. It's an active subset of the marketplace. And the hurdles there are you're reaching people that are running from something for either a good or a bad reason, and you better figure out what that is. And a lot of times they're not going to volunteer that, especially if it's not as positive as they would like. The passive recruiting is what we do. It's the person that says, I'm 80% happy where I am. I like what I do. I like the people that I work with. But for one reason or another, it's not my long-term fit. The only way you get to those people is through networking. Hey, they might talk to you. You're out with your friend having a cup of coffee, and they mention this, and you're like, oh, you know what? You should talk to my friend over here. And so it's coming in where they don't have to move. And that's what we like. And what we think is the biggest difference is, one, you're trying to find out what makes this person tick and why do they really want to work for me. On the other, you're having to sell. You're having to convince them that your job and your opportunity is more in line with where they want to go than where they're at now. So technically, you're choosing them and they're choosing you. It's a unique dance. Most people are used to, hey, Laura, tell me why you're here today. And you're having to sell them and convince them that you're the right person. But our approach is more of, no, we're selling the person that our firm is the firm they want to be with.
That makes great sense. And so you're saying the LinkedIn open to work badge isn't necessarily your starting point, right?
It is. I mean, that works fine. But even then, you need to call that person. You need to talk to them. You need to reach out to them. You need to send them an email. Posting an ad on LinkedIn will get you a lot of flow, right? That could be a person that's, if they don't apply for 8 jobs this week, they lose their unemployment. It could be a person that is caught up in the Schwab and Fidelity layoffs, right? It could be a very good employee, but business is down a little bit. So I'm not saying that they're good or bad. I'm just saying that they are willing to go that extra mile for you, where the person that we often are looking for is not open to work. And even if they are, they won't post it there for fear that somebody might see it and then question their loyalty.
Yeah, so that I can see why people would come to you guys, because how do you identify those people? It's hard when you're running a financial advisory firm to also have your fingers on the pulse of all the different possible players out there. That's your job. I'd love for you to share just some stories, if you have, about some staffing that you've done and what impact that has had. And is it only advisors? Is it only junior reps that you're doing, or are you adding on other kinds of staff as well when these firms come to you and tell you they're ready to grow?
From a staffing perspective, we do everything across the board. It's just catered to wealth management. Chief compliance officers, chief marketing officers, chief operations officers, appointment setters, right? You have all these conferences or all these speaking engagements that you do, seminars. Sooner or later, you're going to have people that were good candidates, but for some reason or another, you lost touch with them. Having somebody that can call them and set appointments and get them back on your calendar, anything across the board, from executive assistant all the way up to chief executive officer. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a team to run this growth, right? Like you can't just add in a bunch of sub reps and hope it all works out okay. When you've got like you said, the appointment setters, the compliance, the marketing, like all of that is a big piece of the success that is going to be available if these guys are running a well-greased machine, right?
100%. So I think our biggest, the firms that we work with, it's not that they couldn't hire a recruiter, have their staff start calling people. It's most something they don't have the time. So they need to find somebody that fits them and somebody that fits their culture. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to take the 1,000 people in the area that might fit the role. We're trying to narrow it down to the 100 that makes the most sense. And then we're talking to those 100 to find the 4 or 5 that fit the value proposition of the firm. I deal with an advisor that's up in the Northeast, and salt of the earth guy has the best job in the world for that 2 to 3 year advisor that wants to climb. But he comes off as very by the book, right? He has a deep baritone voice. He's got a personality that he doesn't use 5 words when 2 words will do. Kind of the good executive presence, right? But he comes off as very to the point. And I had to coach him through the interview process. We found him 4 people, and all 4 turned down the opportunity.
Like, no way.
And I was like, you don't understand how intimidating you are, right? You don't understand how this is coming off. And once you get to know him, you and I can talk to him all day, and we appreciate the succinctness of his conversation. But again, he was a little bit old school. He was struggling in his marketplace. There was a lot of people that wanted to work hybrid, and he didn't want that. Most of our advisors don't want that. So that's okay. We work around that. But then he didn't do a really good job of explaining what the job could look like in 2 or 3 years. It really came off as more, you're lucky to be a part of this firm, without saying it that way. And I'm going to coach you up and I'm going to mentor you. But he didn't tell him, look, you're going to start as this junior advisor / paraplanner. In 8 months, if you're doing what you need to do, you're going to be, I guess, what I call more of a service advisor. And then within a year to a year and a half, I want you being a sales advisor, and I want you to be taking over a lot of these meetings. But over the next year to 2 years, I'm here to train you and mentor you. Yeah. It didn't come across that way. It came across as, if you make it past paraplanner, maybe this other stuff will happen. But it was
you'd be
really
lucky if it did.
Yeah. It wasn't quite that harsh, but yes, that we all hear what we want to hear. So in that situation, it was toning down the message and helping him understand what people were hearing versus what he was saying. Right. So those are generally, I wouldn't say any of our clients ever do anything wrong. It's generally they're skipping a step or two in the sense of urgency. And that's half of what we're doing, is helping them identify what makes your firm different than everything that's else is out there. Once we figure out that value proposition, we simply advertise it.
That makes so much sense. So can you share a story or two? I'd love to hear. I know a large majority of the firms that we work with are really still pretty small, 2 or 3 or 4 team members. And they are poised for growth. They're doing regular workshops. They're getting these leads in. They're like getting to the point where it's time to expand. So can you share some stories where your firm has had an impact and like just what that looked like, just to give people an idea?
Yeah. So if we look at one of our firms that's in Orlando, Florida, they have a radio show. They have a TV show. They're doing, I would say, on average, 1 to 2 seminars a week. and
Okay.
they're doing it just in Orlando.
Wow. That's a lot of seminars for just one market, for sure.
And then you add in their radio and their TV. And so their marketing budget is fairly robust from that standpoint. Younger owners that really want to grow.
Yeah.
So we helped them stabilize the Orlando market by adding more what we would call service advisors. We added one sales advisor, I think, in that marketplace. We added a client service associate with them. And then we helped them open Tampa. And so opening Tampa, and that's the goal, is to open 3 or 4 more locations. But we helped them hire what I would call a branch manager. That was something they didn't kind of think about from that aspect, is your first hire in that marketplace needs to be somebody that is more ready to lead, ready to toe the company line. If you hire a person that's just in it for them at that standpoint, there's places for the person that's in it to say, nope, I just want to make money. I want you to make money. I want the clients to be happy. And then I want to go home. Your first hire needs to be more of a leader. So now we've grown that market into 3 people in that marketplace. Out of Orlando, they probably do 7 million right now in top line revenue out of Orlando. And we're predicting that after the first year, it'll be closer to 10 million in Tampa.
Wow.
And as from a marketing and advertising standpoint, there's really no difference. Everything that you were doing there is easily duplicatable. The only difference is airtime, right? You need to work with your connections to where's our radio show going to go? Where's our TV show going to go? But it's all of that is used for that client to do. On average, we've got 15 to 30 families in each seminar. And out of those seminars, generally 50% of them go to in-person meetings. Generally, the closure rate is 30% to 40%. We don't really see too much above that. And then again, we want financial planning. We want tax planning. Our clients are generally fairly specific. So that number could be higher if you're more flexible. But they if you don't want a tax plan, you don't want a financial plan, if we don't have 100% discretion, they don't want to work with you. So if you have those parameters, getting above a 40% closure rate, I think, is fairly tough, but the numbers all make sense when you look at it.
Well, those are good numbers in our industry. I mean, that sounds right on track with a successful growing firm that is getting a good ROI on their marketing dollars. So no complaints here. I think anybody would be delighted with that, and being a little picky and choosy, right? Saying we're being intentional about our growth. We're going to take on people that meet our requirements versus taking everybody and then having a lot of work servicing some non-ideal clients. I think that's a very strategic decision for growth. So
we've got on the other spectrum, a client in Chicago right now. This guy had a business partner that he worked together with for 10 years. That business partner and him had a parting of ways. And so for the last probably 10 years, I would say the guy's 58, 59. Mm-hmm. He's been doing this all on his own with just administrative support, right? So has a radio show and does seminars. And he's like, I think I'm ready, right? He goes, I need to start expanding this. And he's looking at it from 2 approaches. One was a succession plan for him. Like, what am I going to do with this business? I don't plan on stepping away for at least 5 or 6 years, but who knows? So what do I do there? We really had to work with him on that, because you put succession plan, you put equity in somebody's head, and you're never, ever getting it out, which I think is a great carrot to have out there, but you need to make sure you're ready for it. What we needed to focus on was, I've got a radio show. I'm doing all these seminars. I'm keeping myself busy. I've got 3 or 4 extra leads that are coming in every week that are either falling through because I can't get to them quick enough, or are people that I'm having just to try to fit in, and I'm not giving them the level of service that I would because I'm simply kind of burning the candle at both ends, which I think is a lot of advisors that use this marketing. So for us, we brought him a couple of people. And so now he's trying to figure out, do I want that person that has been doing it for 5 or 6 years, that is coming in and they're a great closer, they're a great servicer, they're just not a good prospector. We got him another person that is currently working for US Bank.
Mhm.
And this person also is the head of the debate club for a local community college. The community college has said, hey, if you come here, like why don't we have these classes, these workshops that we do, you can speak at them for free. You can use our facilities for free. US Bank won't let them. So this person's really a marketing, somebody that wants to embrace marketing, has been trying to use it, is comfortable in public speaking, that sort of stuff. And they just, where he's at, the compliance is too restrictive.
Yeah.
So we can give that person a couple of options, but really helping him look at, what's my value proposition? I agree. Do you want to advertise all of your value proposition right away? I think you find the person you want, and then in a year or two, you tell them, hey, I want to put some handcuffs on you. I want to tie you to this business a different way. Doing it on day one, I think, will bring people that are with you because they want to take over your company more than because they value what you're really giving them.
You know what I appreciate, and we're coming up to the end of our time here, John, but I really appreciate how you've shared some very thoughtful and intentional mindsets about how to go about hiring. It's not just, wow, we're busting at the seams, we need to add on some people, so I'm going to bring in a junior rep who's just like me, and not necessarily have the proper onboarding, training, coaching plan, even a how they're going to handle clients. Are they going to be junior to all of yours, or are you going to give them their own lead? Like all of that stuff. You've been really great, I think, today, articulating that it could look a lot of different ways for a lot of different firms, but you're taking the time to help direct these guys and ask the right questions, and ask what you can offer, and ask what that goal is. And again, with succession planning, it's a whole different can of worms, right, than just the growth. And I think this is something that I just want to drive home for our listeners today, that if you are a growth-minded firm, and I know you are because you're a client of ours, if you are a growth-minded firm, there are a lot of different ways to grow. There's not just one way to skin that cat. And it takes some really thoughtful, strategic thinking that you need to have, that actually you just might not be able to do on your own, because just because you're a great advisor, just because you're a great planner, and you're a great closer, and you're a great marketer, doesn't mean that you're also the best at figuring out HR solutions. Like, I love when you said that you put in a branch manager that needed to be a leader rather than a conglomerate of people who were going to be every man for themselves and killing it, right? Like, just that kind of strategic thinking, I think, is so powerful. And I'm taking away from this that there's a lot more to hiring and growth than just finding the right next junior rep. So any final thoughts on that?
I just think I always tell people there's a person to sit in every chair, and every company is different. What doesn't help you is if you're going after something that in the end is not what you need. So the quicker you can get to that realization, and none of us like those tough conversations, and a lot of times it's tough to get it. That's what I would say is, figure out what you're looking for, know where you're going, and then don't compromise. And if we can help with that, that's probably the biggest value we can add.
That's great. I would love for you to share. We always ask at the end of the session here, we always ask for your definition of success. So John, do you look at something either in your professional life or your personal life, and it runs the way things work for you in order for you to feel that you are successful? Do you have a personal definition like that?
To me, I get, it's funny because when all of my candidates go to interview, I tell them, when you leave this interview, I want you to understand that firm as a culture. Do I fit with them? I want you to understand the role. Is this something I can do for a couple of years and be happy? Or is this something I could do for the rest of my life? And the other thing is, what does success look like? And I think sometimes so many people define success as, I graduated, I got married, I made this amount of income, I bought this car. And I like to put success, at least from our perspective, in more of attributes, meaning, hey, Laura, the last person you hired that was really successful, why were they? And I care more about, they were coachable, they were hungry, they were a servant leader, all the key buzzwords. But what we also don't ask, sometimes we focus on success, and the last question I tell them to ask is failure. What does failure look like? And I don't want the answer of, oh yeah, we had to let the last person go because they couldn't make it to work on time. To me, that's what I want to know is, tell me the last person you hired that you were so optimistic about. You had all the potential, and maybe you still respect them as a person, but they didn't work out here. Mm-hmm. And why? Maybe that's because I said, we want you to sell this ship, but keep it between the beacons. They couldn't keep it between the beacons. They wanted too much control. So I tend to focus, if we know what success, the skill sets, the attributes of the people that have been successful, but we also need to know the attributes of the people that haven't been successful. If you hear those keywords, if the success ones describe you, success is probably something you can achieve there. If what you're hearing is more on this person, they were too independent, they wanted too much freedom, they didn't adapt to our company philosophy quick enough. If that's what you're hearing and that's some of the stuff you tend to run into, then that may be one you want to avoid, right? But success to me, to answer your original question, is a win-win. I'm happy, you're happy. And the biggest thing you got to determine is there's success on the short term as well as the long term. Having somebody that's successful for 3 or 4 years working for you is phenomenal, I think, where we tend to focus on, oh, I want somebody that's going to be here for the rest of their career. That's something I think you got to work through as well.
That is incredibly thoughtful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure in your career, making those decisions where you can replicate the success and get the success that you want for your clients is critical. So, John, how can people who are interested in talking to you find out more?
Simply go to our website, advisorseekers.com. Our phone number, all of our contact information is in there. I'm a real people person. If you like what you see, if you have this, call me. Call any of my staff, talk to them. We have on there the contact us form. Avoid it. Just pick up the phone, call us. Let's have that conversation. And if you're ready today, let's go. If it's, I've got some questions and I think I'll be ready in 6 or 7 months, let's talk about that too.
I love it. Real person, pick up the phone. There we go. Skip the form.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Hey, John, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing some of these great growth strategies. I'm sure we're going to have some folks calling you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a really terrific conversation. Thank you, Laura. I always love it when it gets down to definition of success. And John's, your answer was really interesting. And as Laura noted, it was thoughtful. Right? And I appreciate that. Laura, if people are listening and they want to get a hold of John, they know how to do that. If they're listening and they want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
We are always available, whiteglove.com, or send an email, info@whiteglove.com.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in and listening to the Fast Podcast with Laura Galloway. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, the question is why? Why haven't you? The button's right there. It's easy. Hit it and subscribe. This way, when Laura comes out with a new podcast, it will show up directly on your listening device. You won't miss another episode. We also humbly ask that if you like it, rate it, please, and share it with others. Help spread the word about the podcast and the show. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at White Glove, I'm Bill Tucker, urging you, do not wait. Live your best day today. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Fast Podcast, Financial Advisor Strategy Talks with Laura Galloway, your go-to source designed to help you grow your business. Have questions about the topics covered during the show? Visit our website at www.whiteglove.com or email us at info@whiteglove.com. Don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of White Glove. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial services provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.